For those that I haven't met, my name is Michael Goldberg, and I'm the Executive Director of our Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship at Case Western. I also teach at the business school, and we're thrilled to partner with Jumpstart and welcome Kimberly Spates here today. As the screen said, talk about tax, business, and accounting issues for startups. And Kimberly, we're thrilled to have you here today. And as usual, for those who've been with us before, we want to have it be participatory. So if you have questions, you can either put the question as you want to ask it in the chat. We'd love for you to unmute and ask it. Kimberly will call on you, or Doug and I will help. And if you're watching on LinkedIn Live and you want to ask a question, just put it in the comment in LinkedIn, and then Doug and I will be checking and make sure we get that to Kimberly. So with that, Kimberly, it's wonderful to have you here, and over to you.
All right, thank you, Michael. Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending this workshop. I am Kimberly Spates, owner of Spates Accounting and Bookkeeping Services. I started my business formally about 2 years ago while working full-time. This past May, I ended my employment so that I could focus on growing my business. I am the mother of 3 and the grandmother of 3, soon to be 4. I was born and raised in Cleveland. I've been working in the accounting field for about 20 years. I have volunteered at various organizations and mentored individuals interested in the accounting field. I know a lot of you are thinking that I look very differently from my professional headshot. Well, you know, this is what happens when COVID-19 shows up and shuts everything down, right? So let's get started. Today's topic is tax, business, and accounting issues for startups. So this topic is not just relevant for startups, it's also relevant to a lot of small businesses that have been operating for many years. As I talk with more and more business owners, I'm amazed at what's really happening behind the scenes from an accounting and tax perspective. Business issues. So the first is entity structure. So there are basically 4 main types: corporations, LLCs, partnerships, and sole proprietors. And of the 3, excluding sole proprietors, there are different levels within those 4 main types. So with corporations, you have C Corps, S Corps, and also nonprofits fall under corporations. With an LLC, you have a single member LLC, you have multi-member LLC. Under partnerships, you have a general partnership, limited partnership, and limited liability partnership. The informal type structures are the sole proprietor and then a general partnership, which pass directly to the individual or individuals in the case of a general partnership. And then those individuals are liable for the business activity. The more formal structures include the corporations and LLCs, the limited liability partnership, and limited partnership. With all of those types of structures, there are advantages and disadvantages. So it's good to do some research, connect with other resources to see what business structure is best for your organization. There's Jumpstart, there's the Greater Cleveland Urban League, and also the Small Business Administration. Company name. Although the company name is not an issue, I feel that it's just as important as figuring out your entity structure. So, it's something that you as you're going through this process, you think about, where you see your business in 10 to 20 years. When I decided on my business name, for example, Spates Accounting and Bookkeeping Services, I was pressed for time. I tried, going through a few apps and, playing with words and, trying to figure out a name. But in the end, I decided on Spates Accounting and Bookkeeping Services. So it's too long. I've had customers actually shorten the name for me and just call me Spates Accounting. And of course, it's like, wow, why didn't I think of that myself? And also, I met with a colleague or a CPA who's been in business for many, many years. And, I explained to him that I was, planning to go, 100% self-employed, really focus on my business. So he asked me for my business card. I handed him my card and he said, "Are you a CPA?" I said, "Yes." He said, "But I don't see that here." So when I thought about my name, I didn't include CPA in my name. And so he felt like that made me less credible as a business owner or a CPA firm. So in order to try to solve that issue without, changing paperwork, I made it part of my logo. So with that, again, it's important. Let's look at Amazon. So we know Amazon didn't start out as Amazon. So the name changed back in 1995. It was selected because the largest river, and also it began with the letter A. So, back then it was important because websites were listed in alphabetical order. So that was, critical. So you fast forward to today, and you think of Amazon, and the name is very fitting, right? They're one of the most valuable companies, a very large company. They've gone from, book selling to, web hosting. They have stores, devices. They're in the entertainment piece industry, and they also ship their own packages. So you look around, you see Amazon everywhere, right? Their trucks are everywhere. Amazon has become a household name. So put some thought into what you want to name your business. Compliance. No matter what industry you're in, compliance is important. And it really just starts with some basic things, and that's filing your individual and business tax returns. Again, as I speak with more and more people, I'm surprised at how many individuals just don't do these very basic things that are required of you. Also, depending on what industry you're in, you need to make sure that you're following, all of the rules and regulations. Do you require, does your business require certifications with, like say, like a business of construction? Are you getting your permits before you're working? You can use food prep. Are you being licensed? Did you get your Serve Safe certification? Are you equipped to handle what needs to happen behind the scenes, and maintain compliance. And oftentimes, there are renewal periods. So making sure you're, staying on top of all of that is very important. And if you decide at some point to hire on staff, how you pay your staff, the rate you're paying them. If they're working overtime, are you paying them, that time and a half? Depending on, what size your organization is, are you required to, offer health insurance to your employees? So those are all things that are important. I would also like to mention business dissolution. So oftentimes, businesses close, they shut down. They don't really know that, okay, I need to do something formal to say I'm no longer in business. So let's just say if you have a business, you file your tax return, you check a box and say, this is the final tax return. So that may be all you need to do, maybe from an IRS perspective, a federal perspective. But then when you look at the state says, we need a little bit more information. So there are some other documents and forms required to file to say that you're no longer doing business in the state of Ohio. And it's no different than if you're taking a class and you just decide to drop, you stop going, that doesn't, withdraw you from the class. You have to actually, formally withdraw from a class. Staffing. As your business grows, you have to think about staffing. And if you're going to have employees and or independent contractors. So the important issue here is that a lot of small business owners don't understand the difference between the two. And there are clear differences between an employee and a contractor. I've heard the terms used, simultaneously as if they're, all the same, and it's not. So it's very important to understand the difference between the two. So here in this slide, you can see, I know the wording is a little small, but hopefully you can see, an employee is a W-2. They're someone that you'll pay, weekly or bi-weekly. You determine how they work, when they work, and basically their work is done on your business premises. On the other hand, a contractor is a 1099. They'll receive a 1099 if they're paid more than $600 in a calendar year. This person is independent. They're using their own equipment to perform their job. They may have multiple clients. They're being paid by project, and their, schedule is definitely more flexible. Using contracts and agreements. So, as a business owner, it's important to, have some contracts and agreements established. This identifies the expectations on both sides. So there's, no confusion on what you're providing and also what your client or customer is paying for your service or product. So, that's important, as you grow and move forward. And if there are any major changes that need to be made, then there's an addendum to the contract or agreement and it gets approved. Liability insurance. So although, you're formally formed your business and is separate from your personal, life and assets, a lawsuit can still put you out of business. So it's important to make sure that you have liability insurance coverage, which will protect your business assets. With that, there are different, levels of insurance based on, the industry that you're in or the type of product that you're selling. And there's also deductibles. So just like there's different levels of coverage, there's different levels of deductibles. And you need to make sure that you pick insurance that's adequate for you and also affordable. I have an example of a business. I know there was an employee who filed a business claim, filed a lawsuit. And so that small business had to come up with $50,000. And for any small business, that's substantial, right? You just don't have 50,000, just, laying around. And so this business had to pay 50,000. So I'm not sure if the insurance wasn't adequate, their deductible, but regardless, that's a lot of money to have to pay unexpectedly. Insurance also helps with the disruption of service. So just as COVID-19, shut a lot of businesses down temporarily, depending on, what the business deductible would be, you may be able to get reimbursed for those lost revenues that you had because you had to shut down. So liability insurance covers that as well. Profitability. It's very important to know if your business is profitable. Oftentimes, small business owners may focus on sales, on revenue, but at the end of the day, it's your bottom line, right? What are your net profits? And we all know in the beginning, you may operate at a loss, get to a point where you're at a break even, but you definitely want to get to a point where you have profits. That's how you're able to grow your business and be sustainable. And again, going back to the whole COVID-19 issues, a lot of the businesses that had to shut down or just close their doors permanently, I'm sure most of them may have been in a rocky situation, right? They weren't being profitable. They were just barely making it. And so, it's important to make sure, that you're profitable. Expectations. So, in the beginning, we're always excited. You have a new business, new product, you want to sell, you want to make money and be successful, right? But the reality is, it's just all crazy. So, make sure that when you make a decision to start a business, that you know your limits. How much time and resources do you have to dedicate to your business? Do your research, know your competition. Take the time to set realistic goals, and then you adjust them when necessary so that you don't lose focus. Relationships. Relationships are very important as you grow and as you make that leap, right? So before I decided to actually leave my employment, I started having conversations with people a year ago, right? I just started, anybody I knew, it was sharing with them what I was planning to do, getting any insight, advice, all of that, but just to help me along the way. And again, when I spoke with the gentleman and he said he didn't see CPA in my name. So that was one of those conversations I was having, to help build a relationship so that he was someone I could go to for advice. And also you want to start to build, relationships with potential investors, clients and customers, people who you think may work for you at some point. You want mentors in your corner, bankers, accountants, other entrepreneurs, and even your competition, because your competition can help you, as you try to navigate through starting your business, and they can help you, avoid some bumps and bruises that maybe they went through. They can help you along the way. So next is tax issues. So tax is a burden that we all share. We have to bear, rather, no matter what our circumstances are. So these are just a few of the tax issues. There, are definitely more. But first, I want to talk about, again, just being, compliant and filing your income tax returns. So if you're a sole proprietor or an LLC, single member LLC, this is flowing through on a Schedule C on your 1040. I also have listed the other business type tax returns. And you also want to keep in mind that, if you owe every year, you want to see if you need to make estimated tax payments. The IRS has on their website, like, it's a calculator, just to see, will you owe? It does take into consideration if you're self-employed. So some people, like myself, worked and I had my business. So you have W-2 income and you also have your self-employment income. Well, the W-4 calculator will help you, determine if you need to be making estimated tax payments. Then there's sales tax. So sales tax is a really hot topic, especially with the e-commerce. There are a lot of businesses doing, selling things on the web. There's, shipping off to different states. And so understanding what your responsibility is for sales tax is important as well. You have to, know if your product or service requires that, you to charge your customer sales tax. I can say in general that usually if it's a product, is usually taxable. There are different services, professional service that are taxable, some that are not taxable. You can find information on Ohio's website under sales and use, applying the tax, which will show you basically, or tell you basically what is not taxable. So by default, everything else would be taxable. And again, if you discover that for your business, you have to charge sales tax, then you have to get a vendor's license, and you have to make sure that you're charging the correct sales tax. It varies by county, and of course by state. Then there's the commercial activity tax, which is also known as the CAT tax. So the CAT tax is imposed on businesses, and it's it's imposed because it's a privilege to do business in Ohio. So you have to complete this tax return if you have gross receipts that exceed, that are 150 or more in gross receipts. So if you do have that, then you have to file the CAT tax form. And again, this is not your net income. This is for gross receipts. And again, the state has more information on their website with regards to the CAT tax. The sales tax and the CAT tax, both of tax returns can be filed electronically on Ohio Business Gateway. And it pretty much walks you through, not to say that it's that simple for everyone, but you can enter in your information and actually pay, all at the same time. Payroll tax. So at some point, as I spoke of earlier, if you decide to hire employees, you will be responsible for withholding taxes. FICA, which is the Social Security and Medicare tax, that is the responsibility of the employee and the employer. Both have to pay that tax. So if you are, if you have employees, then you need to make sure that you are withholding that and remitting it to the proper tax authority. So the FICA would be the IRS. You have state withholding, local withholdings, And usually, most companies will hire a payroll service, so it's usually outsourced. So the payroll service company will handle all of that for you. But if for some reason you choose to do payroll in-house, then you have to make sure that you stay on top of these filings and remit the tax to the proper authority in a timely manner. So now I'll move on to accounting issues. So all of these issues really go hand in hand. So separating personal and business expenses, this is very critical. Once you set up your business name, you get your EIN, your next step is to go to the bank and set up a business bank account. I know for a lot of people, this can be very difficult. I just had a phone call yesterday with an individual potential client, and she just, came up with every reason why, she didn't need a separate business account, to handle her revenue and expenses. And,
better keep it separate.
At the end of the day, you can't force people, to operate that way. But, for me, I can choose whether or not I want her as a client because she's not following my recommendations. I also have another example of a nonprofit that was audited by the state. And one of the reasons the agency was forced to dissolve was because of the commingling of personal and business related expenses. So this is, something that should be done. Again, you can't force individuals to do it, but it's cleaner. And then from a tax perspective, obviously there are business related expenses that are deductible, whereas the personal is not. So you need to have, a fine line between the two. So you should take the time to do that. So record keeping. So hopefully, your records don't look like this. This is a bit drastic, but believe me, it can happen overnight. So you want to maintain a good filing system so that you can find documents and records when you need to. There are various apps. There's Adobe Scan, that app you can download on your phone, take a picture, save it as a PDF. QuickBooks has a feature, also an app that you can download, take a picture of your receipt, and you can upload it so that it can later be matched with banking transactions. I also want to note that you should have like permanent records, right? So there are some things that you just hold on to forever, and your EIN letter from the IRS is one of those. And you may have one already if you started your business. If you have not started your business, know that you have to hold on to this. And the letter clearly states, keep a copy of this notice in your permanent records. This notice is issued only one time, and the IRS will not be able to generate a duplicate copy for you. And I had a conversation this morning with a person who can't find that document. And basically, he's going to go look in storage to see if he can find it. So my advice to you is that if you have it, or if you're going to get it, scan it, keep an electronic copy and your paper copy, and make sure you know where it is. Accounting software. Most businesses may start out using Excel, and that may make sense, as you're starting out and you really don't have a lot of business activity. But at some point, you need to move to an accounting software so that you can better track your income and expenses. A lot of businesses use QuickBooks because it's user-friendly, cost-effective, and it also integrates with other apps. Sorry, move too fast. So bookkeeping is the next issue. So there are many businesses. Okay, now you have your accounting software, but who's managing it? Oftentimes business owners think that they can handle the bookkeeping, and you may initially, but at some time, you have to let it go. We all know that time is money. So if you're spending time doing your bookkeeping and trying to manage the finances, then you're losing out on potential sales. So at some point, you have to, let someone else handle that for you. Reviewing financial statements. Again, this goes back to knowing, how your business is performing. Once you have your accounting software, you have the ability to, run reports. You can look at, what's your revenue by customer? What's your revenue by product or service? You can look at expenses by vendor. What are your overhead costs? These are, there are many reports and tools that you can use to help you understand your business and, see how you can make it grow. So it's very necessary that you take the time to review financials. Just recently, I have a lot of examples, but recently I met a business owner who didn't know that his bookkeeper had not been, doing her job, right? So it's 6-7 months down the road, and he realized she wasn't doing the bookkeeping. But if he was getting and looking at his financial statements every month, he would know that that work wasn't being done. So again, even though you're busy, you're trying to grow your business, you still have to take time to review your financial statements. I'm going to end with one last example. And this has to do with a person or a company that applied for an SBA loan. So earlier in the year, this company received some funding from SBA. So at some point, this organization decided to approach the SBA for additional money, double what was given to them originally. So the SBA said, hey, we need more information like bank statements, year-to-date financials, and a 12-month projection of revenue and expenses. So I was asked to help, put this together for this client. I had conversations with the client. He was doing his own bookkeeping. He thought he had QuickBooks Online. He really had QuickBooks desktop version. And he was putting in all of his, receipts. So he only had activity in his financial reports June through October. But when I looked at his bank statements, he had activity going back to January for the whole year. So clearly he didn't have a good handle on what he was doing. Not to mention, as I started, asking for information, I could see, here's some personal things, going on in the bank account. And he couldn't substantiate it. He couldn't, provide me with documentation, to support, what he wanted me to do. And so at some point, I had to disengage myself. I sent him a disengagement letter, and, that was immediately followed by a phone call. He didn't understand, he went on to explain about the work he was doing, and I can't deny the work he was doing, but his bank statements and everything else told a different story. And, unfortunately, I was not able to help him. And unless he found someone else who could put all of that information together for him and present it to Small Business Administration, he missed out on funding. I also want to say that with regards to the PPP, again, there are a lot of businesses that missed out on funding because they didn't have their financial affairs in order. In order to apply for PPP funding, you had to provide financial statements and documentation going back to February of 2019. So any business that didn't have that together, by the time they hired someone and was able to pull the documentation together, they, probably missed out on PPP money because it went very quickly. So don't be that business. Make sure, that you have all of your affairs in order. You're staying compliant, filing your tax returns. All of this will help you have a peace of mind so that you can sit back and relax, as your business grows. Here are a few tips. Again, there could be many more, but there are just a few here. Have a business plan. Unfortunately, a lot of us kind of jump into, starting our business, and we don't have a business plan. We don't have a viable business model. network, build those relationships, find mentors, strategic partners, make sure your finances are in order on a personal and a business perspective. I would also like to add that even if you decide to, file for, different certifications or even loans, these are things that funders and other agencies will ask for. They want to know, have you filed your tax returns? And they're going to go back about 2 or 3 years, bank statements, all of that. So if everything is clean, then you're good to go, right? So just make sure you're staying on top of that. File all the required tax returns again. Have good time management. So when you make that transition, and I can speak on it personally, it's easy to say, okay, I have to go to work. I work, 9 to 5, 8 to 5. I go to, I work for my employer. That's when I work, right? When you have your own business, you have to set those parameters for yourself as well. I actually had to do that for myself a couple of weeks ago and just set my alarm and say, okay, I'm going to get up every day at 7 o'clock and start working, just to make sure that I'm putting, my best foot forward and making sure that I do everything I can to make sure my business is running smoothly. Obtain certifications and accreditations. Anything that you can add to your business's credibility is great. I've gone through the process of becoming certified by the state as a minority business owner, as a women-owned business, and also the Better Business Bureau, getting that accreditation. If you have a product, it may be, I believe it's at ISO 9000 or 900, whatever that is, that kind of takes your business to the next level. You want to make sure that you're, doing everything you can to move forward. Here are a list of resources that you can use. I've mentioned the SBA, their SCORE. SCORE is affiliated, I believe, with the Small Business Administration. There you can have mentors to help you, with your business plan. There's, again, I mentioned the state of Ohio, the IRS. They all have resources for you that you can look and just, make sure that you're staying compliant. There's the Greater Cleveland Urban League I mentioned previously. Jumpstart I don't have listed, but Jumpstart, ECDI, for funding, the Women Business Center, the IRS and the state of Ohio both have YouTube videos that you can watch just to help if something doesn't make sense. The videos actually clarify some of the information. I also have Thumbtack and Calendly. So I discovered Thumbtack recently as a resource to try to get more clients. You pay, basically a small fee, and you get, it's just a way to get new clientele, and it doesn't have to be limited to, let's say, Ohio. You can go all across the United States. And then with Calendly, it allows you to schedule appointments with clients and customers where you don't have that back and forth of, okay, when are you available? And you're checking your calendar, they're checking their calendar. This makes it a lot easier. They can schedule an appointment and they can see when you're available and check their availability at the same time. So that's it. Here's my contact information. You can email me at kimberly@spatesaccounting.com. My website is spatesaccounting-.com. You can also follow me on Instagram, also on Facebook with @spatesaccounting_CPA. Are there any questions? I feel like that was really fast, but are there any questions?
We do have some questions in the chat, so I'll just call on people individually.
Okay.
And they can unmute and ask them. So Wayne, if you want to ask your question since you're the first one to post.
Sure. I actually have 2 questions. Should I ask them both right now, or?
Sure. Your second question was seconded by someone, so why don't you ask them both to start?
Okay, the first one I have is, I sell digital assets to be purchased by buyers throughout the world, not just the United States. And I'd like to know, how do I handle taxes for these buyers, and can it be done in an automated fashion? That's my first question.
Ooh, that's a loaded question. So I have to say that I don't have experience with global, selling. So I'll start with that. I can maybe refer you to someone. Yeah, that's a complicated question that I can't answer for you. I apologize.
Oh, I'll go.
And then as far as like making it more like streamlining it in automation, I'm sure there are different platforms out there. I don't know of one offhand.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it'd be great if you can refer me to someone.
Okay, I will.
Here's my second question. Should we hire an accountant on an as-needed basis, meaning that if we come up with an accounting issue, we hire the accountant for that specific purpose? Or should we hire an accountant on a continuous basis, such as I pay for a year's worth of accounting services?
Mm-hmm. I would answer that by saying it depends on how much activity you have. There are clients that maybe they just need their financials reviewed quarterly. Maybe it's, semi-annually, just having someone look at their books and make sure they're in order. If you have a lot of activity, I would say you need something ongoing. And that could be where you have a year-long contract with an accountant, or, some accountants do it monthly. So it's, what works best for you and your situation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
Samuel, you had the next question if you want to go ahead and unmute and ask it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Great talk, Kimberly. Thank you for doing that. And I think you actually answered most of my question with the last couple of slides. I was curious, in terms of compliance, what sort of resources are available to entrepreneurs in ensuring compliance, whether that's just sort of with taxes or other kinds of licensing and whatnot. Is there anything you'd like to add in terms of resources for compliance?
I don't have any resources to add, but, it definitely is. If you're not sure, then, reach out to a professional, whether it's an accountant, an attorney, just to make sure that you have covered all of your bases and you're not missing anything.
Lauren, you had the next question if you want to go ahead and unmute and ask it. And then if anyone else has any questions, please post them in the chat or raise your hand, and we can call on you after.
Yeah, my question was, you were talking about if the difference between employees and contractors, and that employees work on a scheduled time and they usually work on the company's premises. Mm-hmm. With COVID being so relevant right now and so many people are working from home, does that affect the tax differences for an employee working in the office or at home, or is it the same thing?
It's the same. Yeah, it's the same. So you're still considered an employee, even though you may be temporarily working from home.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Kimberly?
Yes, I'm sorry, I have a question. Kimberly, can you talk to me about IP, intelligent property on your financials? Can I place it as a fixed asset?
It would be not necessarily a fixed asset, but it's intellectual property. So it's an asset in that sense. So you would have it on your balance sheet. I don't know that I would necessarily name it a fixed asset. It's just a naming, but it would still be an asset on your balance sheet.
It would be an asset. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kimberly, I have a question. My husband's been asked for a W-9 form for the business that he's started, and I was wondering if you could maybe touch on the relationship of the W-9 and the 1099 forms.
So the W-9 is required so that whoever he's performing the work for has his tax information. So that's how they're able to produce a 1099. You have to have the W-9 completed, which has the name, address, and tax ID number. So it's no different than for an employee if you're completing a W-4 for an employer. That's how they have all of your information for tax purposes.
Got it. Thank you.
Hey, Kimberly, I had a question as well. You were talking with the bookkeeping about how startups can start off owners being the ones initially managing their own books, but they should probably, as a business develops further, pass it on to someone else, like a in-house accountant or hiring a company. So I was going to ask you basically, what's the difference between an in-house accountant and like hiring a company? Would you suggest to just hire outside at the start if you're going to save some money, or making that kind of further investment of getting someone in-house early on is actually valuable?
I would say it's a personal preference. When you're looking at cost, it may, make sense to hire an independent contractor or an outside firm because, again, initially, if you don't have a lot of activity, it may be cheaper because that person, I'll use myself for an example. I have clients that may require like 4 hours a week, right? So they don't necessarily need to hire someone for that type of work. So, as your business grows and changes, your needs will grow and change. So it's really, what you need at that particular moment.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Kimberly? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kimberly, for taking the time today to talk about tax and business issues. We always appreciate when we have experienced professionals who can talk about these different topics with people looking to start businesses or trying to navigate owning a business.